And we want to help people of all ages and all walks of life across Northern Ireland to make healthier choices. And we want to protect their health for the future. And we deliver services and we work with others, including health and government bodies, to support you to make healthier changes. And we do this firstly through our research. And since 1994, we have invested nearly £8 million into local research, working with universities such as Queen's University Belfast and Ulster University. And research is really at the heart of what we do. In terms of our prevention work, whether by adopting a healthier lifestyle through our wide range of health promotion activities, such as getting a health check with us, we are working to prevent people becoming ill in the first place. We deliver evidence-based health promotion programs, workshops, talks, and we deliver thousands of health checks every year in workplaces, schools, and communities. As I've said, we work with others such as the local council, the public health agency, the community, integrated care partnerships, GPs, and the Health and Social Care Board, and others. And this is vital to what we do and what we're wanting to achieve. We also lobby the government to support the changes, as we know that factors outside of your control, such as income and housing, can impact on our health and the choices that we make. And then finally, our care and support. We support those who have suffered from a heart attack and stroke, and those with lung conditions such as COPD, through programs such as Taking Control and family support. We also support carers and their individuals as well. And if you or a loved one, if you have an existing heart condition or have suffered from a stroke or are living with a lung condition, if you know of someone that would benefit from this support, please do visit our website or get in contact with us if you think someone would benefit from this support service. So why are we running a blood pressure campaign? High blood pressure, or also known as hypertension, rarely has noticeable signs or symptoms. And if untreated, it can increase your risk of serious problems such as heart attacks and strokes. In fact, high blood pressure is linked to 1 in 2 heart attacks and strokes. So our campaign is focusing on the slogan, his numbers up or her numbers up, to focus on the painful or the fatal consequences of high blood pressure, with the numbers counting the cost. Just some figures for you. Over 280,000 people in Northern Ireland are living with high blood pressure. That's 15% of the population. And 1 in 2 adults also don't know that they have high blood pressure. We're not wanting to only warn people of the danger of high blood pressure, but we're also wanting to urge everyone to have their blood pressure checked regularly. So as part of the campaign, we're raising awareness by delivering blood pressure checks and organising events like tonight's online clinic. You can visit our website for further information on our campaign and to access more information on blood pressure and health related information. And we'll put up some links of that at the end of our session. And we're also really grateful to Mace, who is our campaign partner, who is helping to fund this programme as well. So in terms of the objectives for our campaign, we want to educate about the seriousness of blood pressure and its link to heart attacks and strokes. And just a little reminder of that statistic, that 1 in 2 heart attacks and strokes are linked to high blood pressure. We want to encourage people to get their blood pressure checked, as over 146,000 adults have undetected high blood pressure in Northern Ireland. We want to highlight the importance of knowing your blood pressure numbers. This includes knowing what the numbers mean and also knowing the blood pressure level thresholds. We want to increase awareness of how getting your blood pressure checked can help reduce your risk of a serious health event. The only way to know what your blood pressure is to get it measured. And research has predicted that over 3 years, optimally treating adults with diagnosed high blood pressure can avoid 380 strokes and 260 heart attacks. And therefore, we want to encourage people to seek treatment where necessary. This may be through lifestyle changes alone, or it may be lifestyle changes and medication in combination. We want to raise awareness that blood pressure does not only just affect older people, but everyone is at risk due to risk factors such as family history or other health conditions. Our campaign creative features hard-hitting imagery and messaging to capture your attention and to encourage people to take action and get their blood pressure checked. We are holding this online blood pressure session this evening as part of the campaign to give you information and access to health professionals who can answer some of your questions about blood pressure. And we are delighted to be hosting this session and to welcome our panel and you to this session tonight. So enough from me. We would like to welcome our first speaker tonight, who is Dr. Grainne Bonnar, who is a GP partner in a local practice. Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke has a long-term working relationship with Dr. Bonnar through integrated care and promoting health and well-being. And we want to thank you, Dr. Bonnar, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you for having me this evening. My name's Grainne Bonnar. I'm a GP in Head Family Practice in Belfast. I chair the West Belfast Integrated Care Partnership. I've been chair of the partnership for the last 10 years, and I've worked closely with Belma Carter, who's on the call tonight from Chest, Heart and Stroke. She's our voluntary sector representative. So thanks for having me. I'm going to shout a bit louder. I've just been told that it's quite hard to hear me, so hopefully you can hear now. So I'm going to change seats somewhere so okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm going to start just by letting you know then, as a GP, what happens when you come into the practice. So we will see, we'll act as, I suppose, the first point of contact to patients who have been told either that the blood pressure is high by a chest, heart and stroke clinic, or if you've been in with your community pharmacy or pharmacist, or if you have a home monitor and you've been checking your blood pressure yourself. And sometimes actually the high blood pressure is picked up during an examination in the surgery. So when we see you in the surgery, we make the diagnosis in the first instance, and often that will include arranging a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. So we don't make the diagnosis usually just on a one-off high reading. We'll either see a series of high readings or arrange for the 24-hour blood pressure monitoring. Along with that, we'll do some additional tests, which include blood tests, urine test, and an ECG. And these tests look at your heart function, your kidney function, and other parameters in case we need to start you on treatment. Once we make a diagnosis, we start really by giving you advice and support around lifestyle, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as we go on, because it's really important to, I suppose, stress the role that lifestyle and lifestyle factors has in patients who present with high blood pressure. And in many cases, for every pound or kilo that a patient can lose, it can reduce their blood pressure by a couple of points. And on occasions, that can make all the difference between needing to start on treatment or needing to start on tablets or not. In addition to the lifestyle monitoring, we can refer you on through then to exercise programs and other supports in the community. For those patients who need prescription of medication, we see you regularly until your blood pressure is under control. And then once it is under control, we see you for an annual review and checks of your blood and urine once it's stable. So what is blood pressure? Blood pressure is the pressure within the arteries, or the force within the arteries when the heart pumps blood around the body. And if your blood pressure is too high, it puts strain on your blood vessels, or additional strain on your blood vessels and other organs, such as the brain, the kidneys, and the eyes. And this can lead to a number of health problems. When you get your blood pressure checked, you're given two numbers, a top number and a bottom number. Top number is called your systolic blood pressure, and it should be 140 or below. The bottom number is your diastolic blood pressure, and it should be less than 90. High blood pressure is when your numbers are 140 over 90 or higher. If you have diabetes, your blood pressure should be no higher than 130 over 80. And if you've been given a diagnosis of high blood pressure and you're on medication for that, our target for your blood pressure is 135 over 85. Probably the easiest figure to remember is 140 over 90. So high blood pressure puts pressure in your heart, and the heart has to work harder. And over the years, untreated high blood pressure causes damage to the blood vessels, making them narrower and stiffer or more rigid. It can sometimes cause small tears in the blood vessels, and along with this, you can get clots and debris gathering. And on occasions, then those clots can escape or become loose and travel through the circulation to the heart or the brain and cause heart attacks or strokes. Failure to detect high blood pressure can lead to heart attacks, heart failure, strokes, and other conditions like vascular dementia. So it's really important to identify patients with high blood pressure and for me as a GP to make sure that those patients are appropriately treated. So one of the difficulties we have, certainly for me as a GP, is identifying patients who have high blood pressure, because patients rarely have symptoms or signs of the condition. And as Hannah said earlier in her introduction, we know that 1 in 2 patients in Northern Ireland who have high blood pressure haven't been diagnosed. If you've already been diagnosed with high blood pressure, you are at risk of, as I say, heart attacks, strokes, and vascular dementia. If you're on blood pressure medication, it's really important that you come for your annual check with your GP. So I just want to talk then about lifestyle. And as I said earlier, I can't overstate the importance of lifestyle and lifestyle changes in managing blood pressure. So there are factors that you can control as an individual. Other factors are harder to control because they're genetic factors or to do with your gender. But we'll go through them one at a time. So age, the risk of a heart attack and stroke increases as we get older. We know that men are more at risk of heart disease than women. Ethnic origin, we know that people from an Afro-Caribbean background or a Southeast Asian background have an increased risk of developing heart attacks or strokes. If you've already had a heart attack or stroke, you're at increased risk of having further heart attacks and strokes. So it's really important for me as a GP, if I have a patient with a history of those conditions, that we help them modify their risk factors. If you have a family history of heart attacks or strokes, particularly at an early age, under 55 for men and under 65 for women, your chances will be higher. The factors that you can control, however, there are factors that you can control. In relation to your diet, you can reduce salt intake, and the recommended maximum salt intake is 6 grams per day. It's approximately a teaspoonful, and there is now good information on food packaging to allow you to estimate or to know what the salt content is. In terms of activity, we recommend that you're as active as you can be, move more and sit less. Adults should aim for about 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity each week. And ideally, you should also include 2 days of strengthening exercises, particularly as you get older. It's also important to maintain a healthy weight. We know that if you're overweight, the heart has to work harder to do everyday tasks, and that leads to the blood pressure increasing within the circulation. So in order to maintain a healthy weight, that involves a combination of both eating healthily and being more physically active. We also advise that you limit alcohol intake to 14 units or less per week, and ideally have a number of free days during each week. The other recommendation in relation to alcohol is to mention with 8 units of women and 6 units smoking. We recommend that you stop smoking, and if you need help with this, there's help available both within our community pharmacies and also within GP practices, where you can access nicotine replacement therapy free of charge, and there's support to stop smoking that goes with that. Ideally, and I know this is easier said than done, it's important to try and reduce stress levels and to find healthy coping mechanisms to manage stress. I suppose the final recommendation is around getting enough sleep, and ideally that would be about 7 to 9 hours per night. So, blood pressure checks. The NHS recommends that all adults over 40 have their blood pressure tested every 5 years, so that problems can be identified early and treated appropriately. You can get blood pressure checks done in your community pharmacy. Some people have monitors at home, and they're widely available in most of the larger pharmacists. You can also buy them online. I'm not going to recommend any particular retailers, but they're available online and also in larger supermarkets as well. Obviously, Hannah has mentioned the sessions that Chest, Heart and Stroke run, and certainly Fidelma has been involved with our integrated care partnership and others across Belfast and across the region, running sessions in local communities to offer blood pressure checks. You can also get your blood pressure checked in your GP surgery. Right. So why is knowing your blood pressure important? Hannah's alluded to this in her introduction. We know that high blood pressure is linked to 1 in 2 people who present with heart attacks and strokes. And 50 to 60% of strokes could be prevented if patients who had high blood pressure had it treated appropriately. And we know, again, as Hannah said, that over a 3-year period, properly treating adults diagnosed with high blood pressure could avoid 380 strokes and 260 heart attacks in the region. Persistently high blood pressure, as well as increasing your risk of heart attacks, other heart disease such as heart failure and strokes, can also increase your risk of developing peripheral arterial disease, and that's narrowing of the blood vessels in the legs, and that can cause pain on walking distances and can cause ischemia or total blockage of blood vessels to the lower limbs. It can also cause weakening of the large blood vessel running from the heart, the aorta, and weakening there, and that's a cause of sudden death. And in addition, can cause kidney disease and vascular dementia, as I've mentioned before. So, just to finish, it's really important that all adults over 40 avail of opportunities to get their blood pressure checked, so that we can increase the numbers of patients identified from the 1 and 2 that we identify at the minute in the population, up to identifying all patients who have high blood pressure, so that we are who's reducing the preventable causes of heart disease or preventable cases of heart disease and stroke in our population. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bonnar, for that really informative presentation. We really thank you for that advice. It's greatly appreciated to start off our session tonight. As Dr. Bonnar had mentioned, that some of you may have been taking your blood pressure at home. So we do have just this little video that we are going to play now that will hopefully demonstrate just some useful tips and a step-by-step guide of how to take your blood pressure accurately at home. So have a listen to this.
During this demonstration, we will provide you with a step-by-step guide of how to take your blood pressure at home using an automated device. Before you begin your blood pressure check, there are a few important things to remember. When you first take your blood pressure, try to use the arm that your GP would use, or take 2 readings, one in either arm, and use the arm which is recording the highest reading. From then on, use the same arm. It is also important to remember to use a blood pressure machine which is validated, and it will need to be calibrated every year. This is to ensure accuracy of results. You may want to bring your blood pressure machine into your GP or your local pharmacist to ensure that it is accurately recording. It is also important to use a blood pressure machine that is for your arm rather than for your wrist, as these are more accurate. Before your blood pressure check, it is also important that you relax. So take a few deep breaths and sit for 5 to 10 minutes. For your blood pressure check, it is also ideal that you take your blood pressure on bare skin. So wear a short sleeve shirt or t-shirt, or you can wear a thin blouse or shirt. For your blood pressure check, sit on a seat that will support your back and enable you to sit
Am I the only
upright.
one not hearing
It is
anything?
also important that you put your 2 feet firmly on the ground.
Sorry, is anybody else having issues with their sound?
Yes, I'm not hearing anything at all, I'm afraid.
I can hear fine, Hannah.
Okay, thank you.
For an
Just for
accurate
those who
reading,
maybe
it is
can't
also
hear,
recommended
if you just
during this
maybe
demonstration,
just double
we will
check that you're
provide you
connected to your audio, okay? If there's any issues, we are recording this session and we will send the video to you afterwards as well so that you can hear it afterwards.
with a step-by-step guide of how to take your blood pressure at home using an automated device. Sit on a seat that will support your back and enable you to sit upright. It is also important that you put your 2 feet firmly on the ground. For an accurate reading, it is also recommended 30 minutes before your blood pressure check to not have anything to drink, including alcohol or caffeine. It is also ideal that you have nothing to eat. You should also not smoke, not exercise, or no bathing, again 30 minutes before your blood pressure check. It is recommended that everyone over the age of 40 years old has a blood pressure check every 5 years. And if you're on medication, you should have your blood pressure checked every year. This is with a health professional, either at your local pharmacy, your GP, nurse in your local GP surgery, or at a health check at Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke. To begin your blood pressure check, place the cuff on the upper arm with the plastic tubing facing down towards the hand. The cuff should be about 2 centimeters above your elbow to make sure it can detect the artery in your arm just under the skin. Rest your arm on a solid surface, such as a table, so it is at the same level as your heart, with the palm of your hand resting up. It is important that you sit still and do not talk during the test, as this can affect the accuracy of the result. During the test,
Sorry, I think it's just frozen, so we're just gonna try and reload it here. Sorry, good old IT issues.
When you
Nothing
are
ever runs
ready,
smoothly.
press the start button on the blood pressure monitor. The cuff is pumped up to restrict the blood flow in your arm. This squeezing may feel a bit uncomfortable, but it will only last a few seconds. The pressure in the cuff is then slowly released, and during this time the monitor uses sensors to detect vibrations in your arteries. The pressure in the cuff is recorded at 2 points as the blood flow starts to return to your arm. These measurements are used to give your blood pressure reading. After the test, once the monitor has fully released the pressure and provided a result on the monitor, remove the cuff from your arm. Take 2 or 3 readings, each about 1 to 2 minutes apart. If your first reading is much higher than the next, ignore it and take an extra reading. Once you have 2 to 3 readings, you can work out the average. Keep a record of your measurements and write them down exactly as they appear on screen. Blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury, or mmHg. When your blood pressure appears on the screen, you will see a top number and a bottom number. Systolic pressure is the top number. This is the pressure when your heart pumps blood through the arteries and around your body. Diastolic pressure is the bottom number. This is the pressure when your heart is resting in between beats. For example, if your blood pressure is 140/90 or 140/90 mmHg, it means that you have a systolic pressure of 140 mmHg and a diastolic pressure of 90 mmHg. As a general guide, ideal blood pressure is considered to be between 90/60 and 120/80. High blood pressure is considered to be 140/90 or higher, and low blood pressure is considered to be 90/60 or lower. Try to take your blood pressure at the same time for each of the readings. If your average reading is consistently over 140/90, you should get it checked with a health professional, either with the pharmacist, your GP, or at a health check at Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke. It is important to remember to not check your blood pressure too often, as some people find that they become worried or stressed about small changes in their readings. Small changes are normal throughout the day. Stress can also raise your blood pressure in the short term, making your reading higher than it should be. Don't stop taking your medications if your blood pressure falls. Always speak to your doctor before stopping your medications, even if your blood pressure has fallen to a healthy level according to your home monitor. Speak to a health professional if you are worried or have any concerns about your readings or home monitoring. And if you think that you may be having a stroke or a heart attack, call 999 immediately. In addition to taking your medication, if required, you can also make changes to your lifestyle to help reduce your blood pressure or maintain it at a healthy level. You can maintain a healthy weight, lower your salt intake, limit the amount of alcohol you drink, be more active, and increase the amount of fruit and vegetables you eat. If you have any queries about measuring your blood pressure at home, please speak to a health professional at your local pharmacy, GP surgery, or at Northern Ireland Chest, Heart and Stroke.
So hopefully you find that video of benefit to you if you do measure your blood pressure at home. And as I say, sorry for the few technical glitches through it, but we will send it to you after tonight's session so that you can view it at a later stage as well. So moving on to our second speaker tonight is Dr. Carol Wilson, who is a consultant cardiologist in Belfast and a member of our governance board. And again, we really appreciate you speaking tonight, Carol, and we look forward to what you have to say. So I'll hand over to you, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad to say that I actually don't have very much to say because Hannah and Grainne have covered so much of the ground already. But there are a few things I would like to emphasize. First of all, everybody should know what their blood pressure is. And if you have it checked, whether it be at your GP surgery or with the pharmacist, you should ask what the figure is and keep a little note of it somewhere. Very, very important, because it's often useful to know it if you end up in hospital with some other illness. Secondly, it's important to emphasize the importance of not just looking at your blood pressure as a risk factor for heart attacks or strokes or other vascular disease, but you need to look at all the factors and all the risk factors that you have. So as Grainne said, looking at your weight, stopping smoking, starting to take some regular exercise or increasing the amount of exercise that you take, all those factors, in fact, are extremely important. And sometimes we dismiss them as not being important or secondary to tablets. They're not, they're equally important. And I suppose the other thing I should say is that about 99% of high blood pressure in this community is managed by our general practitioners. And if you ended up seeing myself, although I've recently retired, but if you ended up seeing me, it was usually with a complication. So know your figures and take care of all those important lifestyle factors. And why do we worry about high blood pressure? Well, as a cardiologist, I worry about your heart. And basically your heart is a pump. And like any pump, it works best if it is working under the right conditions. And if your heart has to pump against a high blood pressure in your arteries, that puts it under strain. And initially you may not notice anything, your doctor may not notice anything, but in the long term, the heart does become unwell, and it can manifest this in a number of ways. You make yourself perhaps more likely to heart attack. Also, to cope with the high blood pressure, your heart has a mechanism whereby it thickens, it puts on muscle as it were, but ultimately that is not very efficient, and you can leave yourself at risk of developing potentially heart failure. And then I think, as the other speakers have already said, apart from affecting the heart and apart from affecting the brain, there are other organs that can be affected, such as the eye and such as your kidneys and such as the arteries supplying blood to your leg. So it's not just one thing, it's all these other organs that can be affected. And by treating your blood pressure, having it treated down to the necessary level, you reduce your risk of adverse events in the long term. That's all I'm going to say.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Wilson. Really appreciate you coming along and for that advice. And it's great that we also have, last but by no means least, we have Sophie Boyle, who is a dietitian who is based in the Royal Victoria Hospital. And Sophie kindly agreed to come as a panel member tonight to highlight the importance of the prevention through lifestyle changes, and how our diet in particular can help manage and lower our blood pressure. So thank you very much, Sophie, for coming along. Would you maybe switch with Dr. Bonnar just to make sure everybody can hear easily tonight, so that we're not missing any vital information? So thank you very much, Sophie, and I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, you are more than welcome. It's so lovely to be here this evening, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to log in. So yes, as Hannah said, I work as a registered dietitian in the Royal. So I work in the stroke unit, and then I've also started working in the neurosurgery ward as well. So I've seen firsthand the consequences and the devastating effects that strokes and heart attacks can have on patients, but also their families. So I'm here just to give a bit of basic advice that everyone else has touched on as well. But sometimes I think we try to overcomplicate things and think that there must be something missing and there must be a magic trick, but actually it's just general basic healthy eating principles, which we'll go over today. So what we eat has an impact on our bodies, both in a positive and negative way. And I try to think of things as a holistic thing rather than naming specific foods as bad or good and attaching morality to things. It's about an overall holistic view of your health and your well-being. So high blood pressure, as well as obesity, high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes all increase our risk of heart and circulatory diseases. And there are things that we can't change, as said before, like our age and gender and ethnic and our ethnicity. But there are some things that we can do, and taking that onus of care can really feel like you can kind of take control back. It can be a bit overwhelming if you're given a diagnosis of hypertension or high blood pressure, but these are some things hopefully that you'll be able to think, do you know what, I can do that. This is something I can do, and to help myself and to help my family as well. And it's about making small changes that you believe are to be sustainable and will overall make a positive impact on your health. So we look at the Eat Well guide. This has been produced by the government, and you'll see it in lots of different places and is easily available online if you want to stick it on your fridge. But this is like a general overall principle of our day-to-day eating, and it kind of breaks it down. So what we'll do is we'll go through each part of the plate and kind of any hints and tips I have for you to be able to implement this in your day-to-day life, because let's be honest, our days are revolved around food. We have 3 meals a day and we're always looking to the next one. So we'll go around the plate together. So the first part, one of the thirds of the plate that was in the yellow colour is about our carbohydrates. So what we need to do is we need to base our meals around starchy carbohydrates. So these are things like your pastas, your potatoes, rice, bread, that kind of carbohydrate source. And lots of people say to me that carbs, oh, I cut carbs and I lost so much weight so quickly. But actually our bodies want to use carbohydrates as our source of energy. Our bodies are like a car, it needs petrol to run. So our food is our way of our bodies working efficiently and effectively, and carbohydrates is our main source of energy that our bodies use. So it's really important that you have those, but it's more about the choices we make around our carbohydrates. So if we can choose the versions that are whole grain, so they're kind of browner in color, that means that there is more fiber in those things. So like your brown bread, your brown pasta, your brown rice, they have more fiber in it, which has a lot of benefits for us. So the more fiber in foods, the fuller that we will feel for longer, because it takes our bodies longer to digest that. It's like a milling process. Your white versions and your brown versions. Your white versions have been milled more, so the food industry has done a lot of that work that maybe your body could do instead. So those brown versions, you'll feel fuller for longer because your body is having to work harder to break that down and digest it. They also tend to have less calories in them, because there is more fiber in it. And also, when we're thinking about our carbohydrate choices, a lot of the time it can actually be what we're having with our carbohydrates or the way that it's been prepared. So if you think about pizza, obviously your base is carbohydrate, but then on top of the base you have your tomato based sauce, which is great, and then you have your cheese, which is lovely. But if you have excessive amount of cheeses and then you top that off with then quite processed meat, you know, it takes a bit of dough and makes it about 1,000 calories, instead of if you were to make your own, where you were able to control what you're putting on top of it. So carbs are not the enemy, they're there for us, for our bodies to use, but it's more thinking about what we're choosing and how we're eating those. Aim for 5 portions of your fruit and vegetables a day, so that takes up the other third of the plate that's in the green colours. So we'll go into a bit more depth on the next few slides about your fruit and vegetables, but that should take up the next third of your kind of overall view of your day. The pink slice of the plate is talking about your protein sources. So whenever we're thinking about our blood pressure, this can have a big part to play in it. So when you're choosing your leaner versions of meat, there'll be less calories in that, as well as less salt, and reduce the amount of processed meats you have. And I've had lots of patients say to me, oh, but I get my sausages from the butcher. They're lovely sausages from the butchers, but those are still processed meat. I think they've all well, they're lovely, they're fresh sausages. But actually those are still processed meats as well. So it doesn't matter where you get them from, they still have gone under that processing yes, that's the word. And also your beans and your pulses are also a really great source of protein. It doesn't all have to come from animals, and they actually are a lot cheaper. So you can use those maybe in a couple of meals throughout the week as your main protein source. And they're also not as perishable as your fresh meat. So your beans and pulses can be a really helpful way to do that. And when we're thinking about our heart health as well, aiming for 1 portion of oily fish, so that's like a coloured fish, and 1 portion of white fish a week to get those omega-3s, which help with your heart health. The next section of the plate would be the blue one, and that's talking about your dairy sources, so that if you aim for 2 to 3 portions a day, choosing your reduced fat versions with no added sugar, because sometimes what industry will do is they will reduce the fat but increase the sugar, or they'll increase the sugar and decrease the fat. So you're better choosing your diet versions of things, or reduced fat versions with no added sugar of your dairy products. And it's important that you have those for your bone health, for calcium, and your overall health. The next tiny slither is about your oils and spreads. So this is maybe something we forget about. So fat contains 9 calories per gram. So overall, your oils and spreads will contribute to your overall calorie intake within your day, but it's about choosing those that will benefit your body more. So go for your poly or your mono unsaturated fat. So that could be things like your olive oil, kind of your plant-based things rather than your animal-based things like your butter or your lard. If you choose those over them, but be very mindful of the portions that you are using of those, because as I said, it will contribute to your overall calorie intake in the day, but can have more beneficial effects such as lowering your cholesterol and improving your heart health. And then the bit outside of the plate is your treats, and they are treats. I'm not a dietitian to say that you're never allowed anything, but it's about everything in moderation. And as you can see from the plate, the treats are away off the side of the plate, because it's something that we need to be mindful of, that we're not including in our everyday, because if you start that habit, it's very hard to break, of a biscuit at every cup of tea. And it's those things that all add up, which then can ultimately put on the pounds, which, as we're talking about tonight, can then affect your blood pressure. So we'll talk now more about specific things and specific groups that can really have a major impact on your blood pressure. So salt, we are to have no more than 6 grams of salt per day, and you might sometimes see salt labeled as sodium in some products, but it's salt, and it's no more than 6 grams within that whole day. And this is a guide, not an aim, so don't try to have 6 grams of salt a day. This is what we want to stay with under, and the lower you can get it, the absolute better. So some really practical ways for us to reduce our salt is, if you don't put the salt shaker on the table in the first place, taste your food, see what you can taste, instead of, sometimes it can be a bit of a habit to just put salt on before even trying anything. Use your herbs, your spices and your garlic for flavouring when cooking, and as you go along, taste and see what you need a little bit more of a dash of to improve the flavour of things. Look out for hidden salt by checking the front of food package labellings, and try to go for the ones that are mostly green in all areas. So those front of food packages look at salt, saturated fat, calories and sugar. So you want to get as many greens as you can within that, but obviously it can be hard to get all greens, but try to where you can. Because sometimes we won't realise that there's a lot of salt in some, like there's a lot of salt in lots of pastries, which you wouldn't automatically think that is a salty product, but there can be quite high salt in those types of things. When you're able, try to make your food from scratch. I know it can be hard, and especially with the cost of living and everything at the moment, but a little bit of time set aside to do that. You can meal prep, try and make your foods from scratch, because as I said with the example of the pizza, you know then exactly what is going into your foods that you are then consuming yourself, and try to reduce your amount of cured and processed meat and fish that you eat. That's how to reduce our salt. And we'll think a little bit about alcohol now. So alcohol increases our risk of high blood pressure. We will not sit on this panel and tell you that there is a healthy alcoholic drink, but if you choose to drink, we would say to try and keep within these guidelines. So no more than 14 units a week for men and women, and spread this across 3 or more days, and try to have many alcohol-free days. And you can't save up all those 14 units and binge it all at once. And as you can see just on the side there's the amount of units that are in different alcoholic beverages, which might actually surprise you. But it's good to know kind of what is in each thing, and try to add it up as you go out as well, to keep an eye on things. Fruit and vegetables, as I touched on earlier from our Eat Well guide, we're trying to aim for 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. So most people in Northern Ireland don't even eat one. So my big push is to try and do this. Ways that you can increase your fruit and vegetable intake is, a lot of people think that it's only fresh that counts, but actually tinned, frozen, fresh, dried and juice all count. But there's wee clauses within that. So if you are to have tinned fruit or vegetables, as I said, with the cost of living, this can be a really good way to get those in, because maybe you're not able to go out to the shops as often because of the price of petrol, or you're just wanting to buy in bulk, and you're worried about fresh things going off quicker. You can go for tinned things in their own juice or water if you're going for that. Your frozen fruit and veg is just as perfect as your fresh, so go for that. As I said, that's a good way to buy bulk and put it in the freezer if you have enough space. Your fresh things are great, always checking your dates if you can get the ones that look the freshest and have the longest dates in them, try and hook about in the supermarket. And if you're having juice, that can only count as one of your 1 of 5 a day, and you need to keep that within 150 mils. So that's a small breakfast glass. But taking more than that can increase the amount of sugar that you're having. So we say you're allowed 1, but just 150 mils of that. For those who have children, sometimes I think adults can be just as bad as children when thinking about fruits and vegetables. But ways to hide your veg could be things like if you grate your carrots, or if you boil some red lentils and mix it into some minced beef, trying to go for your less than 5% lean minced beef. If you add that in together, it actually blends in really well. This is something I genuinely do myself. And that can then contribute to 1 of your 5 a day, but also reduce your amount of saturated fats you're having, and also reducing your cost of your meal, and also reducing the amount of red meats you're having. So that's a win-win-win-win-win. Another way you could do is if you could blend up vegetables, you can put that into like tomato-based things for sauces for all your dishes. Beans and pulses can count of 1 of your 5 a day, so things like your chickpeas, beans and lentils. And as I said, that can bulk that up quite easily, and reducing your cost of your meals. Whenever you're making your curries, pastas and stews, you can add any vegetables that you want. It can be frozen or fresh, and that bulks it out, reduces the overall calorie content of it, and makes you feel fuller for longer. And if you're out and about snacking, fruit is a great way to snack on things. Just put an apple or a banana or an orange in your bag, and away you go. And when you're feeling hungry, you can go for that. When we think about our lifestyle, I appreciate that people kind of think that BMI puts an unhealthy perspective on things, but actually for the general population, unless you have any major elite athletes here, your BMI is a good indicator for our general population. So we want it to keep between the 20 and 25 kilograms per meter squared. So what you do is you take your weight in kilograms and you divide it by your height in meters squared, and that's how you will get your BMI. Another way that you can keep an eye on things is by your waist circumference. So men, try to keep it under the 37 inches, and women 31.5 inches, and that kind of looks at the way that the fat is distributed in your body, and when it's kind of around more of your abdomen, that increases your risk of high blood pressure. And as was said before, any weight loss is a win. If you aim, we don't have to have big crash diets and unrealistic expectations, but anything from half a pound to a pound a week weight loss will make a huge difference in how you feel in yourself, and also your health and your blood pressure. Keeping active is really important, aiming for about 150 minutes of moderate activity, and that can be spread throughout the week, and can be something that can be fun. You don't have to spend lots of money on it. Do it with a friend, get involved, and avail of your support from your GP as well, of any exercise programs that you could get involved with. And stopping smoking is a massive thing to help reduce your blood pressure, and there's lots of services that you can avail of to try and help support you in that. So maybe there are people here who have maybe suffered a heart attack or a stroke because of their blood pressure. So all this advice that I've talked about does apply for secondary prevention. And if you have had a cardiac event or a stroke, it is never too late to reduce the risk of this occurring again. So tell your family, tell your friends, get them involved. I'm sure if this has happened to you, it can be a big wake-up call for family units and friendship units. So get them involved, tell them the changes you want to make, and help them, let them help you stick to them. Set out goals, get them to text you every so often to make sure it's all going okay, get them to come out for a walk with you, and just get the people that you know well involved in your care and your health, and it will benefit everyone. There are some contraindications for this advice. If you have kidney problems, there might be some diet restrictions that mean you can't have too much fruit or vegetables or whole grains, but if that is you, you probably will know it's you, and if it is, please speak to your specialist teams and ask for a dietetic referral. Also, sometimes when people after their strokes, their swallows can be affected, and diet fluids and diet needs to be modified a bit so that doesn't go down into their lungs. So if that is you, you probably will also know yourself, and asking for a dietetic referral to support you in that can be really helpful for you and your family. So yes, I think that's us. Thank you so much for listening. That was good.
Thank you so much, Sophie. That was really informative. And yeah.
I need to put that and go on to my fridge.
Absolutely. So not only you joining us, but everybody here in the panel has really benefited from that presentation. So we want to thank you for that. And that is us come to the end of our presentations tonight. So I'm sure on behalf of everybody who has joined the session tonight, we want to thank our panel members for their extremely informative presentations and the useful advice that they've given us tonight. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Really appreciate it. As I mentioned at the start, you can see on the screen that we do have links to our website, and also specifically to the website page that is talking about our blood pressure campaign, and more information of some of the MACE stores across the country that we are doing blood pressure checks at over the next coming weeks until the end of October. So please do check out our website for that and for more information around how you can manage your blood pressure as well. I also mentioned at the start that we are going to have a time of question and answer session. So I do see that some questions did come in during the session, but if you have not put your question in yet, there's still time to do so. Pop it into the chat function down at the bottom of the screen. We're just going to stop sharing and stop recording the